Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Monetizing AI, Back Office Transformation for AI and Agentic Business Models. My name is Alyssa and I'm on the marketing team at RightRev. We've got a full house today of revenue accountants, controllers, order to cash specialists, and of course our expert panelists. So I'm going to try to get through the agenda and some housekeeping pretty quickly so that we can get to the good stuff. Just a bit of an agenda for today. We're obviously going to talk about the agentic era and what that means for back office and SaaS transformation. We'll talk a little bit about trust, security, and controls. We'll get into billing and revenue for usage and outcome-based models. We'll talk about some best practices and maybe some gotchas or areas to look out for as you're on your journey to adopting usage and outcome-based models. And then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. With that, please use the Q&A to provide your commentary, any questions. We'll try our best to address those on the fly, but if not, like I said, we've got some time at the end, hoping to leave some time to answer those. Let's see. Let's advance the slide really quickly. So safe harbor, any of the product, anything about the products we talk about today is not a commitment to the product roadmap or timelines. We also have a representative from a public company today, so nothing we talk about there should be used as investment advice. And then as well, we've got some handouts, some resources linked for you, a couple of ebooks, and then you can find a link to YouTube, which contains a demo from RightRev on how we solution for usage-based use cases. So with that, I'll kick it off. AI, agentic models are here. And I don't know about you, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't open up my email inbox and there's at least 20, 30 email subject lines, something to do with AI, all claiming and aiming to help me do my job more efficiently. And this rapid pace of innovation is astonishing, right? And this makes me think about how the back office teams and the back office infrastructure also need to adapt and be flexible to keep up with that demand. There's actually a quote from Bain & Company that says more than 70% of leading Gen AI companies have adopted usage-based pricing models, especially those offering APIs or infrastructure tools. So it's not just about AI companies, your OpenAI and your Anthropic, Perplexity, etc., but it's also enterprise business applications that are layering in AI features on top of their existing SaaS models, right? Gartner also predicts that by 2028, 33% of enterprise software applications will include agentic AI. And because these are largely built on usage and outcome-based frameworks, that just creates so much headache for the back office, right? They're now having to deal with monitoring user data and usage, which comes with a lot of high volume data. So the back office tools need to support those and process those in a timely manner. And then also, just being able to decouple billing from revenue. So because of these complexities, we've tapped a few experts in the space to help us navigate and figure out how to do this better. I'll start by introducing Jagan Reddy, who is CEO and founder of RightRev. He has been Don, the godfather of revenue recognition, and I think that's probably because he might be the only person on the planet who can say that they've built not one, but two revenue recognition solutions. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a very true statement. He's been solutioning for RevRec for almost 2 decades and has probably seen every use case under the sun. I'm willing to bet that as well. Then we've got Mike Aaron, who's on the product team at Salesforce Revenue Cloud with a heavy emphasis and focus on the billing product. And then we have Scott Beechuk, who is investor and partner at Norwest Venture Partners. So Scott, I'll kick it off with you first. So, you almost see a lot of this firsthand, right? Investing, keeping your ear to the ground with innovations and what's coming out. So from an AI perspective, how are you seeing this move and evolve beyond just chat and assisted writing to working its way into the back office? And then how are you seeing these products being priced and packaged?
Well, first of all, Alyssa, thank you so much for having me. real pleasure to have the opportunity to meet everyone and speak on, I think, what is probably one of the most timely topics we could possibly cover here. What's been interesting about the progression of AI, I think in recent years, transformer technology came about in the 2017 era, became sort of ubiquitous, and via ChatGPT in the end of 2022, we suddenly, I think, a lot of people, particularly in the technology world, got their hands on it and realized the power of large language models. And it was shortly thereafter that APIs started to become, part of the dialogue and sort of the developer engagement platform across many businesses as they thought through how can we build this large language model technology into our products and automate our businesses. So the first couple of years, 23 and 24, we saw a lot of co-pilots. We saw a lot of chatbots, and they ran alongside a lot of business applications. And very logical, right? ChatGPT itself was a conversational AI chatbot type of product. And so naturally, we'd want to find ways to work that into our business processes. But fast forward to the end of 24, and here we are in 2025, and the evolution of generative AI and agentic systems is moving faster than it ever has. Companies are now starting to think about how do we embed AI into the actual fabric of our products and our business processes so that it can make all of us as humans 10, 20 times more productive, more efficient at our jobs, and automate business processes that we've never been able to automate before. And then the last thing I'll say is that we've now started to see truly agentic systems. When I say agentic, I mean not just a single AI assistant, but multiple AI assistants being strung together in parallel and sequential fashion to produce more complex reasoning answers for us and start to think and behave a little bit more human. So a lot of back office applications require a lot of smart people these days and historically to get those tasks done. And those aren't single tasks. Oftentimes these are tasks that we have to collaborate between people and collaborate over multiple tasks to complete a larger order or a higher order business function. And that's what the agentic systems of 2025 are aiming to solve. And it's really exciting.
Gotcha. And so, Mike, to kind of put this in practice, you obviously work at Salesforce. Salesforce recently launched Agentforce. Can you share a little bit about the vision behind that and how it's helping shape the agentic era?
Yeah, for sure. I think to Scott's point, Agentforce kind of represents the third generation of AI. So beyond a traditional co-pilot, the vision there is to really deliver a sophisticated, kind of low hallucinogenic agent that can proactively drive customer success, right? To really surround the customer with a relevant, trusted touch point from the company that can help drive growth at every touch point, right? And it can be there for formulating action plans and executing tasks without human intervention, and really being the kind of augmentation of human capabilities with that digital labor function. And so we're super excited about the way that plays into not only just Salesforce, like the opportunity and lead management component, but also into the Revenue Cloud space, into quoting, into billing, and how that actually operates back through the revenue operation stack.
Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of experiencing it from both sides, right? Putting it in practice and implementing it, but also assisting companies, right? Revenue Cloud. We were kind of just talking before this chatting, you've got a number of AI companies as customers who are using Revenue Cloud to help them through the entire quote to cash process. So, yeah.
So it's interesting selling a software component with an AI component into it to an AI company so they can bill for their software, right? So you definitely want to take that angle and think about the way they monetize that and how they go to market with it and how that model is changing over time. It'd be great to tell you they were just subscription companies. It would be great to say that it's a simple $9.99 a month, but the value in AI is the interaction. It's the number of times you call it. It's the number of calls you make into it. And so that monetization strategy has to account for that consumption model. And you have to have that consumption model kind of wound into your quoting sphere, and you build and adjust the pricing during quoting, include specific units, include specific functionality. You need to be able to rate that on the back end of the house, and then you need to be able to collect for it. And then obviously their biggest question is, well, how is my product going to help me run your system more efficiently? And that's really kind of the answer we're trying to get to ourselves. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, Jagan, as Scott and Mike kind of just described, right, back office, well, front office teams, actually, sales teams are getting a little bit more creative in the ways in which they go to market, right? Like you said, you've got a SaaS component, you're layering on usage as a feature on top of that. So, what does this mean for those back office teams? I know Mike alluded to that a little bit, but from the accountant's perspective, how are these changing, their day-to-day lives?
Yeah, I think we're seeing like different models being adopted within the AI, the startup world. Also on the big companies who are offering AI services, we are seeing different kind of variations of accounting models being adopted. Um, Not one is perfect. It all depends on what they're offering and how they want to structure their, um, you know, the overall pricing model and everything. But most of the companies, you can already see this. Most of them are starting with a freemium model where you can start using their service to feel how good it is and whether it's useful for you or not. So there's a big time of freemium going on where they're allowing customers to use their services. Now going beyond freemium, you get into the paid model, and most of the companies already know how the SaaS works, so they're doing a subscription model, but they are going to slowly start realizing that they're going to lose money on a subscription model because usages can vary, and some people can use it very high, and they can start losing money on those. The widely used model that we are seeing is most of them are converting into the usage-based pricing and usage-based billing and accounting, revenue accounting, all that is happening on the consumption-based model. Now, even within consumption-based model, there can be two different models that you can do. Either you can do a pay-as-you-go model, like a phone bill. You use it at the month end, you pay for what you have used. Or many customers, businesses are selling where you do a prepaid credit, so you buy everything upfront, and then you start consuming from that. So we can talk more deep into this, but
Yep.
on a high level, you start with a premium, then you either adopt the SaaS or go into usage-based model. That's what we are seeing today.
Yep.
And
There's a
we
lot.
like the blend. We like the recurring model for 80% of that revenue, and then 20% of that revenue through the usage model coming on the back end, so that you still have a
They,
dedicated revenue stream, and then you protect the system, you protect the overuse with the usage model on the back end. We feel like that kind of is the model that people are kind of moving to. We do see a lot of like pure usage models coming out of that AI side of the house. So folks
we,
are kind of going both ways, right? You see the same?
yeah, I mean, I think you hit the right one. The most easiest is the SaaS. We know all that. Even on the consumption, I'll say people are using a consumption business model, which was even still easier. But we started something unique in the last 6 months with one of our customer, um, big time on the consumption business, but they are also getting into providing AI services. And they started discussing with how they want to do the accounting on the consumption. I will tell you, it's going to be the most complex that anyone would have seen in their lifetime. And I'll be talking more detail soon, so let me get into that a little later. But it is getting super complex right now.
Yep. So it's very easy to get into the complexity, right? And there's different flavors. You've got PLG, pure SaaS, sales led. This can go a number of different ways, and the back office team is left to grapple with all of this. But I want to put a pin in that for a second and quickly pivot and just talk a little bit about security, trust, and controls. So, Scott, if I'm a customer evaluating AI products or services, what should I look for? How do I know that the vendors I'm evaluating I can trust? Because this is all kind of new, right? Nobody has had legacy AI products. So what do you look for there?
Well, I think in this new world of generative AI, trust becomes one of the most obvious topics that everyone needs to prioritize as their number one priority. Um, you know, Even thinking back to my alma Salesforce here with Mike, we always treated trust as our number one priority. But I think today it's even more profound because now we're handing over a lot of very proprietary and sensitive data to AI models. And the question becomes, how do we trust these models? How do we trust the vendors who leverage these models? And what it comes down to, even more than ever, are the vendors and how well they understand their domain and how much experience those vendors have in that domain. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of new startups popping up, with founding teams that may not have experience building in that domain that they're using AI in. And I think as large companies and small companies alike think about, where am I going to trust my data? You have to go back to first principles. Does the vendor understand how the data flows? Does the vendor understand how valuable that data is and how it must be stored and how it must be treated? Do they understand the regulations? Do they understand the nuances of compliance? And if the answer to that question is yes, then you've got a path forward. But I think things are moving so fast in the AI world right now, we also see a lot of vendors that don't have that proven track record, and that don't have that domain experience. And I think that's where we need to keep our eyes wide open, that the models themselves, they need to be built around, we need to build robust enterprise software with guardrails around these LLMs and these non-deterministic systems, in order to ensure that we have that ultra high level of data privacy and security. It's one of the reasons why we chose to work with RightRev, and I can speak from firsthand experience across a very large customer base. It's always been Salesforce's number one priority. And so you're talking to two vendors right here on this call, I think, that have prioritized security, and they're thinking about it in the right way in this new AI world.
Right. A lot of that is foundational on data sensitivity and data security, right? Especially with usage-based models, you're ingesting a lot of that user data, right? How are they using the product? How much? How little? Which products? Where does it go? So Jagan, talk to me a little bit about data sensitivity, especially with something that accounting info that requires accuracy, it requires controls. There's already a lot of built-in controls around accounting, but how do we ensure safeguarding our customer data?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of data sensitivity and security, I still remember my olden days with the previous company as well. It was the dawn of the cloud coming out, and everybody was putting their data into cloud. And we were selling a RevRec solution, and we were selling on-prem. And later we said, okay, we should go to cloud, and we started approaching the finance teams. We could see the huge amount of resistance. Like, none of the finance teams want to put their data on the cloud. They didn't trust it. It's the most sensitive data on the planet. They just don't want to go there. But then over time, they are able to, with all the security protocols, security certifications, we are able to convince the users that their data is much more secure than what they think, and they started slowly adopting the cloud. Now, with AI coming into play, we are already seeing a tenfold resistance in doing anything with AI. Today, when we sign up a new customer, there's so much terms on the contract that we see today, like, do you have AI? Do you share our data outside? We don't want our data to go outside. We literally don't want our data to be part of any of your AI development. So we're seeing a lot of that resistance. So it's a similar thing that's happening from the SaaS adoption. Now we're seeing on the AI. You are going to see the finance team is going to be one of the last team to adopt the AI and the agentic flow and everything. the resistance will be there, and they want the rest of the world to adopt before they get onto it, before putting the sensitive data. Now, we know the challenges here, and that's one of the big focus where how do we build and deliver the AI components within our product where we ensure our customer data is not even being used with other customer data to train our models. So we are looking to have even a customer specific AI model so that those models are trained only with the data, not even across the customer data. So we are heavily focused on that as we continue to build on the AI and the agentic flow.
Gotcha. Yep, that's rich. So coming back to talking about sort of the challenges with these usage-based models, outcome-based models, let's dig into billing and revenue recognition specifically for a little bit. So Mike, like we talked about, it's pick your flavor. There's all sorts of derivatives of usage-based. You've got PPX, pay per use, pay per conversation, pay per outcome, pay per anything, right? But talk to me about how Salesforce Revenue Cloud specifically is helping customers address some of these challenges.
Yeah, I think when you look at the space, you've got some very interesting rating models. You called out a few of them there, right? And those are when our usage record arrives, how do we look at it, how we rate it. When you get on top of that rating record, though, there is another set of use cases that talk about how those records get pulled with other records, how they consume, whether it's a virtual currency or a balance or a total or just a postpaid kind of function in the system, and then discounting and price structures that come in over that. So you get these really large kind of rating and billing models that customers really want to use because it drives adoption, it drives stickiness. So when we built Revenue Cloud, we kind of took a step back and said, okay, well, what is the market, asking for? How do we build a platform level rating capability that can help us kind of ingest that usage and then provide that type of functionality to customers as they go through this kind of evolution, moving from a simple subscription into, that 80-20 split, and then possibly over to a complete usage model. Or how do we help them come from a complete usage model all the way back into a more balanced footprint, right? And so from a billing perspective, estimating total contract value, given RightRev something to look at from this is what the customer's committing, this is what we think is going to come in, and then providing that data about what we're actually billing, so that RightRev can start to look at it from a revenue perspective has been key. So the partnership there between RightRev and Salesforce Revenue Cloud has been critical to our customer success and the footprint, right? Having that tight integration, being able to kind of supply information downstream to the revenue recognition system based on everything that we know and everything that we're getting in from downstream systems in terms of usage has been key. So I would tell you that, it's rating complexity and it's being able to handle that rating complexity, but also getting the information that you need and assembled in the right spots that we can hand off to the revenue recognition system downstream has been big for us.
Yeah, you said something there that I wanna hone in on. You said providing the data to a service like RightRev of what we think will come in, right?
Yeah.
And of course accompanying that with historical data. But Jagan, this what we think will come in, I mean, this can create complexity for revenue forecasting, right? So what does it look like for accountants who are having to now generate revenue forecasts on a variable, a dynamic, usage-based model?
I mean, the business that are moving into the usage-based model, their most important, like it's going to be a tedious task, is to not look at what revenue you recognize, but it's going to be what is your revenue forecast? How much revenue can I earn in the future periods? And how do you get to it? In a SaaS model, it's all super easy. Like you have a contract term, you take the total contract value, spread it over the contract term. You can easily forecast what revenue you're going to earn in the future periods. Now, even you can add more variants, like you can add a churn rate, you can add a renewal uplift, and you can add other variants to your model and you can still generate a good revenue forecast for even for the next 10 years in a SaaS model. It's pretty straightforward to do it by adding a little bit of this variance. Now, on a consumption or the usage-based model, you may have a contract term. The customer would have paid X amount of dollars to be used in 1 year or 2 year, but now there's no easy way to predict what will be my customer's usage next month or 3 months down the lane. The only way you can predict is going to be looking at your historical data and look at what is their historical usage pattern. And the usage pattern, if it's very straight line, you can easily predict even that. But usages are never straight line. It's going to go up and down. There's a lot of variations happening. It can be a seasonal variation can be happening. There can be many factors that impact the usage. Now, one of our customer who is a pioneer in this usage consumption business model, they have a huge team of data engineers, and their only job is to just build revenue forecasting based on the historical usage. And think of the amount of dollars invested just to generate that revenue forecasting based on the historical data is huge. But we're all like super lucky with the evolution that's happening with the AI models that's coming out. Now we can ingest all this data into the AI models to have the AI start looking at the historical data, the seasonal patterns and everything. And you can go how much ever backward you want to look at the historical usage data and start forecasting what can be the prediction for these usages in the future. So this prediction is not only for revenue, it can also be for billing, because it's almost the same amount, or you can give them a, a good prediction of where the billing will be in the future and the revenue will be in the future. So we understand this. Today there are so many different tools in the market to do revenue forecasting, but everything does the SaaS model forecasting. But usage based forecasting is going to be a game changer, and RightRev is already leading there, where we are building a forecasting model that can clearly look at the usage pattern and start giving you an option to go and tune your model how you need to forecast your future revenue.
That's awesome. That's going to alleviate so much pain. Like you said, there was an entire team sorting through historical data just to generate forecasts, right? So we're talking about predictability, forecasting. This all goes into financial reporting, right? So Scott, for the past 10, 15 years, SaaS has been popular, and that North Star metric that everybody kind of abides by is ARR, annual recurring revenue. But as an investor, how do you think about ARR now, with these new usage outcome-based models?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the investment world, myself included, is still figuring out exactly the right way to evaluate companies when revenue itself can be so highly variable. One of the things, though, that we're learning is that a lot of these businesses are seasonal, and sometimes it takes a couple of years before we start to understand the seasonal patterns in consumption. And so, this is all, very, very new. And so we don't have a lot of historical data for a lot of the new companies that we look at that have consumption-based billing models. But we're also, as Jagan alluded to, forecasting capabilities are getting better every day. And so, our best companies are, running RightRev on Salesforce Revenue Cloud. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is companies are still experimenting quite a lot. And so what you see is companies now that are starting to, and I think Mike may have alluded to this earlier, but they're starting to experiment with SaaS models blended with consumption models, where you've got some portion of the SaaS contract, could be call it a platform fee, or some sort of a service fee that is a predictable number. Sometimes buyers really appreciate that. CFOs often love the predictability of understanding the amount that they're going to be billed for the year. And then other companies are also, with consumption models, they're creating these high watermark models where you might buy a certain number of credits for the year. And if you use those credits, by the third quarter, you maybe buy another SKU with another, bucket of credits, and you pay that amount. And it's very very easy, again, for a buyer, a procurement team to wrap their heads around that type of model versus a model where consumption can vary greatly from month to month. So I think everyone's trying their best to figure out, in this new consumption world, how do we smooth out the curves? How do we do a better job of predicting? And then from an investment standpoint, I can say we're evaluating companies now, especially AI companies, based on ROI more than anything. And I think you read in the news, as current as this week, there's a lot of news around, okay, first generation AI B2B companies, are they getting the renewals? Are they generating real value, real ROI for their customers? And so this is just purely from an investor view lens. We're paying a lot of attention to that. Now that we're sort of the rubbers meet in the road when these annual contract renewals come up. The companies, the vendors who are actually delivering a lot of business value are going to get the renewals, and some will not. And then the case studies are the most important thing. I'm sure you've seen case studies by both RightRev and Salesforce on their success in market with their AI products. Well, not all startups have that success to show. So that's something that we're keeping a really close eye on.
Yep. You mentioned something a couple sentences ago, but you said experimenting and experimentation. And I think that AI companies and usage-based companies, right, as they're adopting these models, need to do a lot of experimentation and iterating on the different flavors that they're going to release, what's working, what's not working. Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, recently admitted that they're losing money on the $200 a month ChatGPT Pro plan. They didn't expect, their users to use it that much, and on the back end, they're having to pay for that in compute, right? And so I think that at some point, back office teams are starting to look at their infrastructure and say, hey, how do I make sure that my back end systems are an enabler for growth, an enabler for iteration and adoption to keep up with the demand? It used to be looked at as like, oh, that's just the back office system. We just need to make sure it can generate an invoice, collect money, balance our books, we're good. And now they're starting to see the back office as like a leader of go-to-market. So Jagan, can you share an example of how some companies or even maybe some of our company customers are kind of using these back office systems as an enabler?
Yeah, so before we get into the complexity, when we started RightRev, we built a revenue recognition engine, a common engine that can kind of build for everything. Sorry, did you lose me? I thought.
I think you're back. You're back. We can hear you.
Okay, sorry. So we built an engine that kind of works for everything. But then as we got deeper into the consumption based model, we were working with some of our customers. We understood this is so complex requirement. This needs a specialized engine to handle all the complexities here. So we went ahead and built a purpose-built engine just for consumption business model because the complexities are so huge. Now, if you want to deep dive into this, on a usage-based model, there are several variants, but what we are focused on is either is a pay-as-you-go model, which is very simple. You're collecting all the usage data at a month end or a quarter end. You know how much they've used. You bill the customer. You recognize the revenue. It's all done. Still, the usage data becomes the core for this. But the more complexity comes in where the customer is prepaying for all the services, and then they're allowed to use your services and draw down from those prepaid services. Now, some businesses offer where you pay for certain services and you use only those services, and some businesses are saying you prepay the amount and you can consume any services that we offer. right? So there are different variations we're seeing. Now, when you go down this model, the biggest thing that we have seen is there is a contract term for these prepaid services, but by the end of the contract term, either the customer might have used up everything even before the contract term, so they won't upgrade before this, or they still have something left over at the end of the contract term, and now they want to continue to carry this to the next contract term as well, which is what we call it as unused credits. And how do you roll over those credits from the old contract to the new contract? We have seen a lot of complexity in this. When you roll over the unused credits into the new contract, what happens to the terms of those unused credits that you used in the previous contract? Do you carry them to the new contract, or those credits will be using the new contract term? We've seen all these variations, and we want to make sure that we can automate the revenue recognition by understanding these variations. We give the choice to the customer to decide what terms you want to apply for this unused credits, right? The rollover, what we call is the unused credits from one contract to another contract, has been one of the major headache for businesses to understand. How do we roll over? How do we make sure the new usage data that's coming in can consume the rolled over credit as well as the new credits? Now, on top of this, we also see the customers offering free credits on top of the paid credits to the customer. So assuming I'm buying $1 million worth of credits from a business, and the business offers me 100,000 worth of free credits. Great, now I got a 1.1 million worth of credits. Now, from an accounting perspective, when you start getting the usage data, there's a confusion. Do I consume all the free credits first, or do I start consuming the paid credits first and then later do the free credits? There's a lot of debates going on, and we have seen different variation, but the most commonly used variation is when the credits come in, discount the free credits and then take the paid credits from that and then recognize the revenue. So for example, if we are getting $1 worth of credit that's being used, we remove the free credit from that, maybe a 10 cent or whatever, 10% of that, we remove that, and then we recognize the 90%. So like this, there can be more and more complexity. I can go all day on these complexities of different variation. But now, how does the customer will be able to use all that through RightRev? That's where we have different options for the customer to choose how to handle this complexities. The other big challenge we have seen, somehow this is engraved into a lot of people's mind, that billing is revenue. You know, it's not new. When ASC 606 has been in play for the last several years, ASC 606 completely detached billing from RevRec. So RevRec is not your billing. Billing is not your RevRec. Both go on a different path. They have their different cycles. So that also creates more complexity in this, right? Now, the third complexity I want to talk about, the biggest one, is the contract modification. The new AI startups, they have one or two products. They don't have multiple element arrangements. They can go on a pure consumption business model, not a big deal. But then there are already companies who are selling products in a SaaS model and everything, and now they are launching new AI products. So a customer who is buying, they can buy the SaaS products, they can buy the AI products, all of that in one single contract, and modifications happen. It's a huge challenge for the customer to understand, how am I going to change the contract? How does that impact revenue accounting? How does all the SSP assignment happens and reallocate? So this is where the most challenge also we see. Now, all that is kind of automated in Writer within the rules. The customer can pick and choose. Now, the last complexity that I'm going to talk about is what we have seen in the last 6 months emerging very fast, and this is the most complex we have seen. You buy credits from a business that you want to use all their services. Great, you bought $1 million worth of credit. Now, when you use the services, each services offered under those credits can have different pricing, and they have different discounts, and there are a lot of other terms which are very different. Now think of how an accountant can do all this in spreadsheet. You're looking at a usage data, you have to apply different discounts for different services that you provide, and there can be other terms when to recognize revenue for those services as well. it's going to be nearly impossible for somebody to do all this in a spreadsheet, or even for somebody who's thinking like, I can go and build an in-house solution for all this. It's going to be a nightmare to build and maintain all this. So this is where RightRev has embedded all this in our purpose-built engine, so that you can offer different discounts to those services. You can set up different rules how and when to recognize those different services under that umbrella of services that you offer.
Yep. I love it when Jagan gets excited about complex use cases. Drops a lot of knowledge there, and I love it. But like you mentioned, right, there's lots of options, right? There's no one way to go about this. The door is open for customers, accountants, revenue teams, lots of different flavors they can employ. Mike, Joggin, you guys have seen so many use cases. Companies get this right. There's plenty of examples of companies who get it right. Gainsight, Zendesk, etc. But can you share a few gotchas, or maybe some advice on what to get ahead of as you're maybe starting to think about deploying usage-based or outcome-based models? I'll start with you, Mike.
I mean, I would tell you that the separation of those three systems, your quoting, your billing, and your revenue recognition system, is a place where we see customers really struggle, because it's those three handoffs, quoting to billing, billing to revenue recognition, that tend to be the most complicated. And if those systems aren't inherently linked, then you're not in a good position to really change your pricing models on the whim, to introduce new structures, to do the things that kind of Jog and spent some time outlining, virtual currencies and prepaid drawdowns and rollovers. And so if those systems aren't linked and they're not talking to each other and they're not running on the same platform, then we typically see customers have problems, which is kind of why we've delivered that solution on a single platform, because we believe that removing that friction is kind of the way to stay out of that problem.
Yep, yep. And Jagan, what about you? What are some things to maybe advice to give teams who want to get ahead of some challenges?
I think the biggest challenge that I see on a consumption business model, especially for these AI companies, the traditional contract modification will not work for usage-based products. Like I said before, you need to consider the unused credits. The amount, I'm going to get into more details, so look for the details here. Like you have the unused credits, and the customer would have paid for those unused credits in the previous contract, and those amounts paid. Let's assume you're dealing with multiple currencies, you're offering your services worldwide. The amounts that were paid in the previous contract, they can have different exchange rates. Now we are rolling those credits into the new contract, and the new contract will be in a different exchange rate at this point. Now those contract, the rollovers that you're putting in the new contract, how does that impact what is the customer buying net new? Those modification terms and how you modify the contract, how do you link your old contract to the new contract? It needs to be perfect. For either you do this manually or even you automate a system, you need to know how these are interconnected together. And I see many companies are not thinking about this. We are approached by several businesses to learn like how we are solving this for other customers, and this is one of the main thing that I talk to them about. Contract modification can completely collapse your accounting if you don't do it right, because new contracts are super simple, all the terms are embedded. But when you do contract mod, you have to look across both the contracts to see how to handle all this. Now on top of this, if you are selling multiple element arrangements, now how does the unused portion gets carried to the new contract, and how are we going to assign SSP for the old unused credit and the new credits that is coming in, and how we are going to reallocate the revenue? It's a whole new nightmare in understanding and doing this. And this is where we can provide a lot of guidance on how to do this, how to do it right, and what are the changes you need to make to your upstream systems and processes to get this right. Lot of users think it's a revenue issue, I can go fix it in the revenue system, which is not true. Revenue system takes data from a lot of upstream system. You put the garbage in, you're going to do the garbage out. So we help our customers to understand what changes they need to do in the upstream system so the data can flow in right. One of the things that I want to talk about, the amazing thing on the Salesforce Revenue Cloud architecture, is the way they allow the contract modifications to happen is the dream come true model. They make sure the old contracts to the new contracts and the line items, how they're linked to each other between the old contract and the new contract, is so tight and is maintained very well. For the revenue system, it works so perfect that we understand the chain between the old and new. We understand the usage coming in. We know where to apply. Should we apply to the old contract? We should apply to the new contract. Everything is properly designed, so it makes the life of the accountant easy in handling all these changes.
Yep, exactly. But still, there are some companies that think that building in-house is the best path forward, right? They can't comprehend that there could possibly be a solution or set of solutions out there that could solve for their unique use case. And everybody thinks that they're a snowflake, they're a little, their unique use case. What would you say, Mike? I'm sure you've seen this. I'm sure you've seen it work both ways, good and bad. What would you say to some of those companies who are thinking about building this back-end infrastructure in-house?
I think we've done a pretty good job at highlighting the variability that customers are going through with these pricing models, right? And so if you're building in-house, you're probably building to a use case, and you've probably built the system around that use case. So switching means, going back to the drawing board, going back to the development teams, going back to the testing teams, and rolling out new features and functionality. And so you can do that, but you get on this flywheel of development that you'll be on for the rest of your time. And is that really your business? To develop billing and rating systems and revenue recognition systems. Is that really what you want to focus on? If your answer is yes, well, have at it. But if your answer is no, I want to focus on my business, then that's the point of the system. Is that we've kind of thought about this, talked to 1,000 customers, implemented to 7,000 customers around the world, and we've kind of got a grip on all of the use cases we've seen across those customers.
Exactly. And a lot of times, you get in-house, you get caught up building for your unique use case today, and then that use case changes. And then your engineering team is spending all of their time going back and trying to build for new use cases, whereas a lot of solutions now out of the box can solve for a plethora of different use cases. So, Jagan, what about some of the legacy platforms out there, like the ERPs? What about teams trying to solve this there?
I mean, I always say this from a revenue recognition, especially from the revenue recognition perspective. Either your accounting model is like super simple or you're super complex. There's nothing in between. So um, you can say like I'll do half in automated way and then half in Excel or manual stuff. There can never be an accounting system that can exist like half here and half there. Any system, whether you do manual, you have to do 100% do manual. You're automating, you better automate 100%. Now, what the ERPs and the other systems provide is more for the legacy models, the old tradition models, and they do that okay. But I don't think there's anything that exists to handle all the complexities that we see in the market. Like I said before, the complexities that we discussed a few minutes before, either on the contract modification or understanding the usage data that's coming in and classifying them into the right categories, accounting into the right categories, reallocating the revenue to make sure you are delivering the right revenue to each of the products that you provide. Um, this is our expertise, right? We are talking to hundreds and thousands of customers. We are understanding their use cases. By the time you think about those use cases, you hit those use cases and you want to build, you're looking at a year of build and you're looking at millions of dollars to invest. Meanwhile, we would have already covered that use case. We are ready with that, and you can start enabling your products, and you can deliver your products much faster into the market than focusing and building all this, right? It's all about go to market, how fast, the time is of the essence, how fast you can enable your businesses to market and sell your product quickly. And you don't want your back office system to hold you back, right? So that's where you leave those complexities to us, and we live in this world, we breathe into this every minute, and we understand the complexity.
Yep. And to your point about moving fast, right? And being able to iterate, all of this is moving at an incredible speed, right? A lot of companies are introducing new AI features on top of their existing SaaS application very, very rapidly, very fast. So for companies needing to move that fast, sometimes within a quarter, 90 days or so. Mike, what does that quote to readiness kind of look like as they prepare to launch something in a very short time frame?
Yeah, I think you've got to instrument everything. You can't just pick one metric and say this is what we're going to base our pricing model on. This is what we're going to base our business on, because that might not work. That might not be flexible enough based on what you see in the marketplace. And so our advice always is to instrument more than you think you're ever going to need, and get that usage data ready, right? Because if you want to switch models, if you need to reprice something, if you need to look at it again, if that usage data is already available, you can start to consume that and start to include it in quotes and orders and rating components and push it downstream. And so it feels like anybody trying to get into the usage based model today, I'd tell you to instrument more than you actually think you might need.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Jagan, anything from you on that? Preparedness, quote to cash readiness in a rapid time frame?
Um, I think, like I said, it's going to be the entire upstream system. Um, the biggest challenge I've seen so far in the consumption business model, where companies struggle to either invoice their customer for the right amount or recognize the right amount of revenue, is all centralized with how good your ability to capture your usage data. We have seen that usage data it can go really bad. The way you attach the usage data to your contracts and how do you rate them is super important, right? For all this to happen, your contracts, your usage data, your billing, all this needs to be connected very well. So um, I continue to repeat this. It's data, 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 and make sure, especially your usage data, you have a right process and right way to capture it, classify it, attach it to a contract, and rate it. If you do this perfect, then your billing will fall into place, your revenue recognition will come into play, and your close will be much easier.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been super insightful, at least for me. I hope it has been for everybody else as well. I'll give all the panelists one last opportunity to say any closing thoughts that they might want to address before we wrap up. Um, but yeah, I think this has been great.
Okay, I would just say thank you to both RightRev and Salesforce, and thank you for having me. Um, this is going to be a really exciting year. We are now on the path where we have unlocked, technologically speaking, the ability to start modeling very complex human work in the back office. And what that's going to open up for everyone on this call is the ability to accelerate your business, accelerate your close process, but accelerate all of your processes across your office of the CFO. And we're just barely seeing the tip of the iceberg. Maybe we're only seeing a couple snowflakes on the surface of the water. We might not even be that deep yet. So I think a lot to look forward to, and look forward to connecting with everyone outside of this webinar if you'd like to continue the conversation.
Yep. All right. Thank you again, panelists. This has been awesome. Thank you to all the attendees. Again, handouts and resources are linked. Be sure to check those out, including a short demo on how RightRev satisfies usage-based requirements. We've got a better together story with Salesforce Revenue Cloud plus RightRev linked. And then I will be following up with a recording. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.